Yeah. Okay, the elephant is in the room. I know I don't fit in. Rejection used to scare me, but now I'm wearing thick skin. As a Christian, they won't let me infringe, since I'm on the fringe, but I'm not on the fence. A life of sinning is the current, swimming with the current. A promise of punishment isn't a deterrent. So people just wild out, foul style, but it ain't what I'm about, so I gotta bow out. Cause I'm anti, I can't ride, but I can't lie. There's a tension in me. One side wants to see the sin winning in me. The other side knows there's been an intervention in me. Yeah, so I feel Paul in Romans 7. Y'all, I'm still flawed and I long for heaven. I still die daily, but no need to call the coroner. Just another day in the life of a foreigner. The world hated you, now it's hating me. It don't relate to you, it don't relate to me. Lord help me, I wish the world felt me. But since it don't, I'm forced to go against the grain. I'm forced to go against the grain.
So this is going to be part 2 of Books of the Bible. I pray that the Most High bless the hearers or watchers of this video. I pray that some enlightenment and some revelation be revealed to you. And I hope this is turns out to be a blessing. We're going to talk about the, well, before we begin, let's recap what we showed or taught in part 1. In part 1, we went through the authorized King James version of the Bible and showed you that there are scrolls written by writers that are no longer in circulation, or the powers that be have those scrolls hidden away and they are not available to the public. So with that said, the church, specifically the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestants as well, have come up with these canons. And these canons are so-called lists of authoritative books of the Bible. So if we prove that there are scrolls missing that have been destroyed or have been locked away, how can any list be canonical or be defined as being the divine rule for your books of the Bible? It's really impossible to have a authorized canonical list if there's books that's missing or scrolls that are missing. Second point we made in part 1, all of the so-called church councils, I believe the most earliest one or the oldest one was in Jamnia in 90 AD. Then you have the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. And then the most recent one was the Council of Trent in 1545 through 1563 AD. Now, the most important thing about all three of these dates, remember the earliest one being 90 AD, that's the Council of Jamnia. Well, the Hebrew Israelites and the temple was completely destroyed about 70 AD. And the remnant of Judah was either taken to Egypt as captives or led to Rome as captives. And then the remnant that was left in the land of Judah just became tributaries or servants of those people that were put in the land. Pretty much the Romans and the Greeks that were left in the land of Judea and Idumea. So any ancient meeting or any ancient writings after 70 AD was not the product of a Hebrew Israelite. And if it's not the product of a Hebrew Israelite, how much authority could we put on that book or that list of books that Rome has gave us as being authoritative or canonical? So that was part 1. If you missed it, if you didn't have a chance, go check it out. It's on our YouTube channel, Nothing But God 12. In part 2, we're going to dive into the books that's been labeled as apocryphal books. And I wrestled with these books for many, many months because I was brought up in romantic Christianity. I worship on SUN Day. As always, I said, I thank my mother for that foundation. But all praise due to the Most High that, now my eyes are open to the real truth of His Word. But I was taught that those books that are known as the apocryphal books were evil, had witchcraft in them. They were not to be trusted. They had mixed facts. They had a whole bunch of stuff in them that were not holy or not canonical. And when I came into this truth about who the real Hebrews are and who the real children of Israel are, I noticed many of my brothers and sisters reading from these books. And that caused me to pause because, like I said, I was taught that these books are evil books. They're books, with twisted doctrine in it. So I scoured the internet for hours and hours, read many articles, read many different people's research and what they came up with about these books. And I read many, papers pro these apocryphal books and many papers and articles against the apocryphal books. And both sides had very valid arguments. So much so I was getting confused. Like, what do I do with these books? So finally I said, well, you know what? Let me read these books for myself. And let me go through each one of these books and find out what each one of these so-called apocryphal books are really saying. And let me see if these books match the Bible or do they contradict the Bible. So that's what I did. I went and got a copy of the books bound together known as the Apocrypha. And I spent months reading each book, comparing it to the authorized King James Version, the current edition, and comparing it to what is said in these books to see if I could find contradictions. And what's funny, if you Google the original 1611 King James Bible, you're going to find these books listed in the original 1611 King James Bible. So somewhere along the line, these books were taken out of the King James Version of the Bible. And again, there's many myths and different reasons given for these books being taken out of the King James Version. Some say it was because publishers wanted to save money, being that the church, the Protestants, the Christians, no longer accepted the books. So it was no use of printing the books, and to save money, they took these books out. Some say, it was taken out because it was proven these books are evil and these books shouldn't have been included in the King James. So we're going to get to the root of the issue and see if we can bring some understanding to these books known as the Apocrypha books. And if you've never heard of these books, and if you're not familiar with these books, it's a list of books, and it starts with 1st and 2nd Ezra, a book called Tobit. It has a book called Judith, the rest of Esther, the Wisdom of Solomon, Ecclesiasticus, Baruch, with the Epistle of Jeremiah, the Song of the Three Holy Children, the History of Susanna, Bel and the Dragon, the Prayer of Manasseh, 1st and 2nd Maccabees. And these make up the books of the so-called Apocrypha books. So before we get into the lesson, it's very important that we give some kind of background information of what was going on with these books. Because once again, even these books are Hebrew records. And whether you honor them or accept them as authoritative or not, you can't have a full understanding of what's going on if you don't know the Hebrew Israelite history. So real quick, let's go over some history. So by the time these books of the Apocrypha are being written, the tribe of Judah is going through their desolation. We're going through troubling times that's been prophesied to the children of Judah all throughout the Old Testament. If you read the books of Jeremiah and Isaiah, those two prophets, their books or their scrolls are the most detailed, and they were trying to prophesy and preach to Judah and Israel. I think when Isaiah wrote his scroll, the tribe or the 10 tribes of Israel was still in their land in the northern kingdom. But I think Jeremiah's scroll is mostly towards Judah. It speaks on the destruction or desolation of Judah if they didn't return from their wickedness. So, we had some world kingdoms come, and by the time we get to the book of Maccabees, Alexander the Great has came and conquered. Alexander the Great dies, and now his 4 generals are dividing up his lands. His 4 generals, Alexander generals, divides up his kingdom, and they pretty much start fighting with each other because of the evilness of their hearts. They start fighting with one another and going to war with one another. So you had Greeks going to war with Greeks over power and land and wealth. And poor little Judah, the Israelites, are caught up in the middle of this. But we shouldn't feel so sorry for the Israelites or the tribe of Judah, because we were warned. Now, during this lesson, I'm going to be talking about the history. I'm going to be talking about the pagan nations. But I don't want anyone to get confused, because we're not blaming anyone for what the Hebrew Israelites went through, but our forefathers themselves. And even though we know which nations came and conquered us, and we can prove which nations destroyed us, we sometimes give too much credit to these pagan nations. Because when we put the scriptures together, precept upon precept, precept upon precept, as we're taught, we get some understanding. So if you go to the book of Isaiah 5:25, we see that all this evil that's come upon Israel, the Hebrew Israelites, has come upon us for a reason. So this is Isaiah 5, chapter 5, verse 25. It reads, "Therefore is the anger of the Most High kindled against his people, and he has stretched forth his hand against them, and has smitten them. And the hills did tremble, and their carcasses were torn in the midst of the streets. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still." So Isaiah is giving us the reason why the Israelites, the Hebrews, are going through all this turmoil even to this day. We have all kind of Black Lives Matters campaign, Stop the Violence, but our scriptures, our scrolls tell us why we're going through this, why we're being whipped and killed. It's for punishment, because the Most High is angry with his children. So while we are going through our punishment, we need to learn the lessons we can and be ready to repent and do things the Most High's way. So let's go into the books of the Apocrypha and find out if we can get some understanding on, are these books to be trusted, and what's going on indeed with these books, and see for ourselves instead of taking the words of someone else. So another scripture to read to give us some background is the book of Lamentations 1:3, because we just told you that the Most High has put these evils upon his people for punishment for disobeying his laws. So while Judah is in captivity and going through our punishment, well, evil men, strangers, crept up into the land of Judah and entered into our temple and pretty much started playing the role as if they were Hebrew Israelites. And one passage we can get to verify this is in the book of Lamentations, chapter 1, verse 3. It says, Judah is going into captivity because of affliction, and because of the great servitude. She dwells among the heathen. She finds no rest. All her persecutors overtook her between the straits. So again, in the book of Lamentations, is giving us the reasons why the Hebrew Israelites, specifically the tribe of Judah, is going through their lamentations. Then if you go to, drop down to the 10th verse of Lamentations 1, it says, the adversary has spread out his hand upon all her pleasant things, for she has seen that the heathen enter into her sanctuary. So this is referring to the tribe of Judah as a woman. And it's saying that Judah has watched the heathen enter into her sanctuary, meaning the temple. It says, whom you did command that they should not enter into your congregation. So this is Jeremiah saying that we Jews have seen the heathen enter into the holy temple, and he's talking to the Most High. He's saying, and you commanded that they should not enter into your congregation. So while Judah is away in captivity, the bulk of the tribe, there was always a remnant. The kings that came and conquered us always conquered and destroyed the strongest of the tribe. And when, after they subdued and got the people in subjection and fear, then of course there was a remnant left in the land, but they were mostly older priests or men or women and children who could no longer withstand this king. And that remnant was left in the land, but the bulk of our people are in captivity. So what Jeremiah is recording in Lamentations, he's saying, while the bulk of Judah is in captivity in a strange land, the heathen has come into our gates and has entered into our temple, our sanctuary. And the Most High always told us that the strangers and the heathen, sometimes they are one and the same, they are never to be mixed with us. They are never to come into our sanctuary. So with that background, let's get into the books of the Apocrypha. And in this segment, I'm going to go over some of the most, strongest reasons that the people who don't trust the Apocrypha use to say, see, these books are not valid, these books are evil. And if as times permit, I will go and show you how these people take these books out of context because they don't understand the Hebrew customs or the Hebrew language. But once you put two and two together, once you put precept upon precept, we're going to find out that these books are not evil books. These books do not have unholy things. So let's get to it. The first thing people, whether they be Christians or what have you, the first reason they say that we shouldn't read from or use the Apocrypha in church is because they have unholy things in them. They have evil things, aka they have witchcraft in these books. And the first scripture they take you to prove that is the writings of a man named Tobit. So they take you to Tobit and they read this passage and say, see, this is not holy, this is not of God. So surely these books. Now, mind you, the whole list of Apocryphal books are like 12 books. But they go to Tobit and read that and say, well, since Tobit has it, we can't trust none of these books. And even if Tobit did have some witchcraft, okay, why not just take Tobit out and see what the rest have to offer? Don't just label all of them as evil books because you think Tobit is evil. But people don't do that because they're running off someone else's doctrine. They're running off someone else's teachings and just taking a man or woman's word that, hey, it's evil, leave it alone. But we're going to get some understanding, hopefully, by the grace of God. So you turn to Tobit 6 and 4, and if you don't have Apocrypha, you don't have to spend any money. The original 1611 King James is available online, and I will put the link to the online edition in this video when I post it. And you can see that you can actually click on the 1611, and then the apocryphal books are listed, and you can click on each apocryphal book and read those books online. So if you don't have the books, it's online free of charge. You can use your smartphone to read these books. So let's go to Tobit, and we're going to read chapter 6, verse 4, and it reads like this. To whom the angel said, open the fish and take the heart and the liver and the gall and put them up safely. So the young man did as the angel commanded him, and when they had roasted the fish, they did eat it. Then they both went on their way till they drew near to Ecbatane. And then the young man said to the angel, brother Azarias, to what use is the heart and the liver and the gall of the fish? And he said unto him, touching the heart and the liver, if a devil or evil spirit trouble any, we must make a smoke thereof before the man or the woman, and the party shall be no more vexed. As for the gall, it is good to anoint a man that has whiteness in his eyes, and he shall be healed. So they read this passage in Tobit and says, see, this angel is telling this man to use fish guts to chase away evil spirits, and that is witchcraft, and that's false doctrine, and that does not line up with the holy word. And therefore, Tobit and I guess the rest of these books are uninspired and should not be read. But to really get an understanding of what's going on here, you have to understand Hebrew customs and Hebrew culture. The first thing I want to bring to your attention is when you read the word angel in English, the word angel in Hebrew does not always mean one of the messengers of heaven that the Most High would send to earth sometimes. When you read the word angel, it does not always mean one of the heavenly hosts that the Most High sends down. And to get some understanding or to explain that, let's drop religion for a minute and let's just use some common sense. Why would an angel of the Most High, who is very powerful and always come to earth in the authority of the Most High, why would he tell a human how to chase away an evil spirit if he's walking with this man or he's with this man? He's an angel of the Most High. He has power to defeat any evil spirit. So I would question, is this really an angel talking? And when you do the research, you find out that this angel called Brother Azarias, he's really not an angel in the sense of a heavenly host of heaven. Sometimes in scriptures, prophets and holy men were called angels. And to get some understanding of that, you can Google, if you're not familiar with the Blue Letter Bible, you can just do a Google search for Strong's word. It's Strong's H 4397. So just Google Strong's as in power or muscle strong, and space the letter H as in hotel or Harry, and then behind that you write the numbers 4397. And you will find that the word that they use for angel, when they translated our letters from Hebrew, it's a Hebrew word called malak or ma'ak. Ma'ak is the word for angel. And sometimes the word angel or the word ma'ak just means a messenger. It doesn't always mean one of the holy angels who resides in heaven. And to get some understanding or proof of that, after you Google Strong's H 4397, you could turn to the book of Samuel. If you go to Samuel 16 and 19, you'll read a passage, and there it says, Saul sent messengers to go ask Jesse to send his son David. And when you read 1 Samuel 16:19, and you see that word Saul sent messengers, the same word that Saul used for messenger is the Hebrew word Strong's H 4397, which is malak or malak, and it means messenger. Now, Saul did not send a letter, or Saul did not go to heaven to get this messenger to go to Jesse to ask Jesse for his son David. Saul sent one of his messengers or one of his angels to go retrieve David. And to get some more understanding of that, or to bring another witness to verify that, we can go to the book of Revelations, and we can read Revelations 2. And you, if you've been brought up in the church, you know the stories of Revelations 2, where messages is sent to the seven angels of the seven churches. And if you don't have understanding of the Hebrew, you would think these seven angels are real angels or angels from heaven. But when you drop religion and use some common sense, you will see that these angels of these seven churches are not angels of heaven, but they're angels or messengers of the Most High, or preachers or prophets of these churches. And to prove that, we can just read some of the passages from Revelation. So this is Revelations 2:1. It says, "Until the angel of the church of Ephesus write." So this first angel is the angel of the church of Ephesus. And drop down to verse 4, and Christ is saying, "Nevertheless, I have somewhat against you, because you have left your first love." Now, common sense, how could an angel of heaven leave his first love if his first love is Christ who is in heaven? It doesn't make sense. Sometimes we have to drop religion, take a step back, and just ask some common sense questions. How could this angel of the church of Ephesus be a real angel when verse 4 says, "Nevertheless, I have somewhat against you, because you have left your first love"? Family, beloved, the angels of heaven do not have free will. They have commandments that they're given, and they follow to a T. There are some angels with different capabilities or different duties, but those angels, or in the past, when those angels or messengers took it upon themselves to stray or deviate, we know what happened to those angels. So the first clue that angels of these churches are not heavenly angels, but actually are messengers or prophets or preachers of the Most High, we could just see the language in the letters. You have left your first love. So we can continue. We go over to Revelations 3, and this is Revelations 3:1. "And unto the angel of the church in Sardis write, These things saith he that has the seven spirits of Yah and the seven stars. I know your works, that you have a name, that you live and are dead." And then he goes down and says in verse 3, Christ is telling this angel or this messenger of the church of Sardis, he says in verse 3, "Remember therefore how you have received and heard, and hold fast and repent. If therefore you shall not watch, I will come on thee as a thief, and you shall not know what hour I will come upon thee." Again, just some common sense questions. How could the Messiah come upon one of the angels as a thief if he's in heaven? If this messenger or this angel of the church of Sardis is really an angel of heaven, he's residing with Christ. And furthermore, what will an angel of heaven have to repent for? In verse 3, Christ tells the angel of the church of Sardis to repent. There can't be an angel in heaven who needs to repent. It doesn't make sense. But we've been taught with bad doctrine or false doctrine, and we mistake these things, and that's what's going on in the book of Tobit. This Tobit 6:4 is not a heavenly messenger, is not a heavenly angel, but is indeed a prophet or a priest of the Most High. His name is Azarias, and he's walking with Tobit, and he's giving Tobit some instructions how to fight off evil spirits and then how to heal somebody who has whiteness of the eyes. Now, to debate whether he told him some good advice or some holy advice, who are you? Who are we? We're just but men. We don't know these things. But if we're going to reject Tobit for that incident where Brother Azarias tells Tobit to smoke some fish parts to chase away evil spirits, if we're going to reject Tobit for that incident and call it unholy, then we have to take a look at the books that's in the King James current editions that have some unholy things, and we have to get rid of these books. Because if you turn to the book of Samuel, the 28th chapter, we're going to find out some very unholy things that happen in this book. And surely, if you can't have your cake and eat it too, you can't say Tobit has something unholy, so we kick Tobit out, but Samuel has unholy things, but yet Samuel made it into your list of canon. So if you turn to the book of Samuel, chapter 28, verse 15, it reads like this. And Samuel said to Saul, why has you disquieted me to bring me up? And Saul answered, I am sore distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and Yah is departed from me, and he answers me no more, neither by the prophets nor by dreams. Therefore I have called you, that you may make known unto me what I shall do. So what's going on here is Samuel has went to a witch. He has went to a evil witch that works black magic or that gets her power from Satan. And he's asked this witch to bring Saul back from the dead. I'm sorry, I reversed that. Saul went to this witch and asked this witch to bring back Samuel from the dead, because Saul was doing wicked things in the land, and the Most High would not hear his prayer no more. The Most High would not receive his sacrifice, and now he has a problem. The Philistines are kicking up, or the Most High is raising up the Philistines to come chastise him, and now he wants to hear from the Most High, but the Most High is rejecting everything he's offering up for his evilness. So instead of Saul humbling himself and putting on sackcloth and worshiping and really repenting for his sins, he goes the opposite route, and he goes to a witch and asks this witch to bring up Samuel from the dead. And this witch was able to do it. And to get some understanding, we can go back up a few verses. This is Samuel 28 and 9. And the woman said unto him, Behold, you know what Saul has done, how he has cut off those that have familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land. Wherefore then layeth you a snare for my life, to cause me to die? And Saul sware to her by the Most High, saying, As the Lord liveth, there should no punishment happen to you for this thing. Then said the woman, Whom shall I bring up unto thee? And he said, Bring me up Samuel. And when the woman saw Samuel, she cried with a loud voice, and the woman spake to Saul, saying, Why have you deceived me? For you are Saul. And the king said unto her, Be not afraid, for what sawest thou? So see, Saul was putting the witches and the wizards to death, but then when he couldn't get a word from the Most High, he disguised himself in the night and went and sought one out and asked her to raise up Samuel from the dead, that Samuel may give him some insight or may go to the Most High on his behalf to get some wisdom on what to do against the Philistines. So that's my first piece of evidence. If you're going to reject Tobit for that little piece in Tobit 6:4, then you got to reject Samuel, 1 Samuel, and then consequently 2 Samuel. You can't trust none of the record of Samuel, because Saul went and saw a witch and brought back the dead. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So let's move on to my next point. The next point, people or romantic Christians or whoever says not to read the book of the Apocrypha because it mentions prayer for the dead, praying for the dead, and those of the Protestants who reject Roman Catholicism say, yeah, Rome liked these books because it validates their unholy acts. Well, again, if you don't have any Hebrew understanding or no knowledge of the Hebrew, you're going to say, yeah, the Roman Catholic Church is evil and they're praying for the dead and they're giving alms. So yeah, this definitely shouldn't be accepted. But two things I'd like to bring to your attention. One, the Romans have no understanding of the Hebrew language. Because if they did, if those Roman church fathers, aka those Roman priests, really understood the Hebrew customs and really understood the books of the Apocrypha, Rome would have been the first ones to bury these books instead of putting these books into their canon. Because when you read the books of the Apocrypha with the current version of the King James Bible, you'll find that Rome is identified as the enemy of the Most High. Rome is identified as the enemy of Christ. So for the Roman Catholic Church to take the Apocrypha books and try to justify their unholy customs just confirms that they don't understand Hebrew customs and they are complete strangers to our way of life. So they say praying for the dead is an unholy thing because the dead are dead and the dead can't receive any prayers. Therefore, when you read about prayers for the dead in the Apocrypha, you should reject the Apocrypha books because they're unholy. So they take you to the book of 2 Maccabees, and that's where one of the I'm gonna take you to two different books in the Apocrypha that the naysayers think is talking about prayers for the dead, but we're gonna bring some understanding to it. So this is second Maccabees, and it's 12. 2 Maccabees 12. And I really can't go through each and every comparison and contrast because these lessons will go on forever. At the end of the day, you're going to have to do like I did and sit down and read these books one at a time with your accepted or canonical, so-called canonical King James, and you're going to have to read them side by side and find out, like I did, these so-called apocryphal books do not contradict Scripture. So here we go. 2 Maccabees 12 and starts at 43. And when he made a gathering throughout the company to the sum of 2,000 drachms of silver, he sent it to Jerusalem to offer a sin offering, doing therein very well and honestly, in that he was mindful of the resurrection. For if he had not hoped that they that were slain should have risen again, it had been superfluous in vain to pray for the dead. And also in that he perceived that there was great favor laid up for those that died godly, it was a holy and good thought. Whereupon he made a reconciliation for the dead, that they might be delivered from sin. So they read this passage in 2 Maccabees and says, this is unholy, this is damnable, and this should never have been included in the Bible, and therefore, again, all these books are uncannibal, and should be thrown away. But brothers and sisters, beloved, I beg you to hold your convictions, and let's get some understanding. Once again, let's drop religion and use some common sense. Verse 43 says, in that he was mindful of the resurrection. Right then and there, that raises my antenna. This brother is just not offering a prayer for a dead body. He's thinking about the resurrection. And some at this time didn't believe in the resurrection, and some did. But this brother is not just offering prayer for a dead carcass. He's not. But before we compare this to the King James, let's get some understanding again, because this same concept or theory appears again in the book of Baruch. We go to the book of Baruch 3, and this concept of praying for so-called dead or dead bodies appear again. So Baruch says, where we start. This is Baruch chapter 3 and verse 10. How happened it, Israel, that you are in your enemy's land, that you are waxed old in a strange country, that you are defiled with the dead, that you are counted with them that go down into the grave, that you have forsaken the fountain of wisdom. For if you had walked in the way of the Most High, you should have dwelt in peace forever. So Baruch seems to be saying that the children of Israel are counted among the dead. And again, with no Hebrew understanding, this would cause you to err and says these are unholy things. But Baruch is speaking of a spiritual death. Baruch is saying you are counted among the dead. Well, again, let's drop some religion or a religious thought, and let's use some common sense. How can a live human being be counted among the dead? That's an oxymoron. That doesn't make sense. But when you put precept upon precept, Baruch is mentioning a spiritual death. He's saying when you leave, when we're scattered into these lands of punishment and we are away from our commandments, we are dead. And to get some understanding again, we can go up a few verses, and he puts some understanding on it. So this is Baruch 3 and 2. Hear, Yahweh, and have mercy, for you are merciful, and have pity upon us, because we have sinned before you. For you endures forever, and we perish utterly. Yahweh Almighty, you are the power of Israel. Hear now the prayers of the dead Israelites and of their children which have sinned before you, and now hearken unto the voice of thee, their God, for the which cause these plagues cleave unto us. Again, if you have a tainted mind full of false doctrine, you're going to read Baruch 3 and verse 4, and says he's talking about praying for dead Israelites. But he's not praying for physically dead Israelites. He's mentioning dead Israelites who are dead spiritually. For when you forsake the Torah or the law of the Most High, you become dead. Let me read verse 4 again. Yahweh Almighty, you are the power of Israel. Hear now the prayers of the dead Israelites and of their children. How can anybody physically dead offer up a prayer? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Which have sinned before you, and not hearken unto the voice of you, their power. For the which cause these plagues cleave unto us. Well, how can plagues cleave unto dead people? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. When you step back and drop religion and you step away from these false teachers, it makes sense. So let's continue on. Remember not the iniquities of our forefathers, but think upon your power and your name at this time. For you are the most high power, our power, and you, Yahweh, we will praise. And for this cause you has put your fear in our hearts, to the intent that we should call upon your name and praise you in our captivity. For we have called to mind all the iniquities of our forefathers that sinned before you. Behold, we are at this day in our captivity, where you have scattered us, for a reproach and a curse, and to be subject to payments, according to all the iniquities of our fathers, which departed from the Most High, our power. Verse 9 is the very clue. Hear, Israel, the commandments of life. Give ear to understand wisdom. You see that? Baruch is telling the Israelites, give ear to the commandments of life. Meaning, whatever land you are scattered in, whether it be Egypt, Judea, if you went back to Rome, if you be in Greece, wherever you're scattered to, Israelites, return to the Torah, return to the commandments of life. So when you put these scriptures in perspective, you see that these books in Apocrypha are not talking about praying for physically dead bodies. Not at all. So now we're going to compare this to the King James books. And when you read it in the King James, it makes perfect sense. So we go to what we just read. You keep what we just read in mind. They're talking about spiritually dead Israelites, and then the brother in Maccabees said he had the resurrection in mind. And this lines up with the books of the King James that we use today. The first witness I'm going to call to the stand is the Apostle Paul. And we're going to use his letter in Ephesians. His letter in Ephesians 2, I believe it is. Ephesians 2:1. And it makes perfect sense, and it lines up with what we just read in the Apocrypha books. This is Ephesians chapter 2. And Paul writes this. And you has he quickened who were dead in trespasses and sins. Again, keep in mind what we just read in the Apocrypha. And now read Ephesians 2:1. And you have he quickened who were dead in trespasses and sins. When you're dead in trespasses and sins, what are you doing? You're living your life without the laws and statutes of the Most High. Because John tells us sin is the transgression of the law. So when Paul says, and you have he quickened or made alive again who were dead in trespasses and sins. Is Paul talking about physically dead bodies? Or is he talking about spiritually dead bodies? So when we get Ephesians 2:1, and he says it again down in verse 5, if you have any confusion, Ephesians 2:5. Even when we were dead in sins, have he quickened us together with Christ, and have raised us up together and made us sit together in heavenly places with Christ. Again, when you don't have a Hebrew understanding, these books of the Apocrypha makes no sense. Now we just read Ephesians. Now when we read Baruch, that you are counted with them that go down into the grave. Well, we're counted with them that go down into the grave because we're in lands of captivity among heathens who do not live or trust in the laws of the Most High. They live by the laws they made up that benefits them. They do not pray to the Most High for the latter rain. They build irrigation systems. They do not look for the moon and sun to discern the times. They set watches and clocks and tell you what time or what season we're in. This is what he says we are counted. This is Baruch chapter 3, verse. This is Baruch chapter 3, verses 1 through 13. When you put the understandings with the King James, it makes perfect sense. He's talking about spiritual death, not physical death. And Maccabees, when we first read Maccabees, this brother is talking about the resurrection. He's not praying for physically dead bodies. He's praying for spiritual deadness and those who he believed died in righteousness who are going to raise again. And that makes perfect sense when you have the understanding. When you have the understanding, it makes perfect sense. And the last point I'm going to use, before I move on to this one, we're going to go and read it again, called One More Witness to the Stand, to verify this. So we go to Daniel 12 and 2. Now Daniel 12 and 2 is in your current King James Bible. And Daniel says, this is chapter 12, and I'm going to start at 1 and go down to 2. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which stand for the children of your people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to the same time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. Verse 2. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting content. So Daniel verifies or confirms as another witness to what these brothers in these so-called apocryphal books are talking about. These brothers can't be talking about praying for physically dead bodies, and they're talking about the resurrection. How can you pray for a physically dead body and you mention resurrection? That's a spiritual Hebrew thing. No other nation believed in the resurrection of the dead except the Hebrews. So when you put precept upon precept, these things make perfect sense. Moving on. So now we're going to go into a phase, and what I'm going to do, again, like I said before, if I showed you all the comparisons of the apocryphal books with the King James you have, this video would take too long. So I'm just going to go with a few verses to give you a starting point to jump off. But again, you're just going to have to break down and read these books for yourself. So the first one I'm going to go to is Colossians 4:16. Colossians 4:16. And like I said, if you're just tuning in, you don't have an apocrypha at your house, you can read the apocrypha online. I drop the link in this video later. So this is Colossians 4, chapter 4, verse 16. And when this epistle is read among you, cause that it be read also in the church of the Laodiceans, that ye likewise read the epistle from Laodicea. So Paul is telling the Colossians, when you read this letter, read it in the church of the Laodiceans also. And why would Paul want this letter read to the Laodiceans? Well, that's another lesson, but I'll give you a preview to it now. So we go to the book of Maccabees, the book of First Maccabees, and we're going to go to the 12th chapter. First Maccabees 12. And we find out why Paul wants his letter read to the Laodiceans. And here we are. So this is First Maccabees 12, verse 21. It is found in writing that the Laodicea, now the Apocrypha used a different spelling of these people. The Apocrypha has them listed as Lacedaemonians, but Laodiceans and Lacedaemonians are one and the same. So this is verse 21. It says, it is found in writing that the Lacedaemonians and Jews are brothers, and that they are out of the stock of Abraham. So the book of Maccabees are telling you that the Laodiceans, as they are called in Colossians, are actually the stock of Abraham. Now, people think Paul was writing letters to anybody who was believing on Christ or the Messiah, but Paul was indeed writing letters to scattered Israelites. That's another lesson, but that's just one other point to show you that the King James that you have and the Apocrypha are matching up. That was Colossians 4:16 and First Maccabees 12 and 21. I'm going to go to my next bit of proof. So we did the prayers for the dead. So let's go to 2nd Ezra 3 and 16. 2nd Ezra 3 and 16. And we're going to match this up with the King James. So it reads, and unto him you gave Isaac, and unto Isaac also you gave Jacob and Esau. As for Jacob, you did choose him to you and put by Esau. And so Jacob became a great multitude. So this is saying that the Most High, this is running down the Abraham line. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Esau. Verse 16 says, but you were put off by Esau, but you made Jacob a great multitude. Well, we have the same witness in Romans 9. Romans 9 says the same thing we just read in Apocrypha. This is Romans 9 and 13. As it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. So again, we have another instance where a so-called book of the Apocrypha is matching what you have in the current King James Bible that doesn't have the Apocrypha anymore. Now I'm going to take you to something real strange that no one has paid attention to. So this is going to be real strange. And when I read it, it blew my mind. It blew my mind. So let me find it, because it's one of those books that no one reads from anymore, especially if you go to Sunday churches. So much so, I got to look in the concordance to make sure I find the right book. So this one right here is going to be mind-blowing. Hold on to your seats. I promise you it's going to be worth it. So if you go to your King James Bible that you have now and find the book of Esther, you find the book of Esther, and it's Esther. It's right before the book of Job. You go to Esther. Esther has 10 chapters. But the 10th chapter stops at the 3rd verse. And I always saw this. I'm like, why would you just make a chapter with 3 verses? Why not just put those 3 hanging verses at the end of the last chapter? So watch this. Watch how this unfolds. So I'm reading from the King James version of the Bible that has the that doesn't have the Apocryphal book. And this is Esther 10 and 1. And the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea. Verse 2. And all the acts of his power and of his might, and the declaration of the greatness of Mordecai came unto the king, advanced him. Are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? Verse 3, the last verse in the current King James. For Mordecai the Jew was next unto King Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and accepted of the multitude of his brothers, seeking the wealth of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed. That's verse 3. If you turn to the Apocryphal book, or if you're online, there's a link and you'll see the rest of the chapters of the book of Esther. And what's funny is the rest of the book of Esther picks up with Esther chapter 10 verse 4. And it starts, Then Mordecai said, The Most High has done these things. For I remember a dream which I saw concerning these matters, and nothing thereof has failed. A little fountain became a river, and there was light in the sun and much water. And this river is Esther, whom the king married and made queen. So the rest of Esther picks right up from the King James book of Esther. If you don't know the story of Esther, Esther was a beautiful Hebrew woman. The king of Persia, we were under Persian captivity. He saw her, loved her, whatever. She became queen. And while she queen, she got into the king's ear, and she did good things for the children of Israel while we were in captivity. Mordecai was her uncle. So here you have the rest of the chapters of the book of Esther picking right up where the King James currently leaves off. The King James leaves off at Esther 10 and 3. The rest of Esther picks up at verse 4. Very strange. Very strange. So I'm going to go to one of my favorite ones, and this comparison really nailed it for me. I really didn't need to read anymore, even though I did. And this one just like, wow. Like I said, it nailed it for me. So if you go to the book of Maccabees, I believe it's Maccabees. I think it's. Let me read. Bear with me here. And these comparisons can go on and on and on. It just doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop. But yet the church tells you that these books are unholy and not to be trusted. But these books are just matching the King James word for word, story for story. Story for story. So in the book of Maccabees, this is Maccabees 4. Maccabees 4, and you can start at 4 and 36 and just read the rest of the chapter. A little backstory, this is when we're fighting the heathens, the Greeks, as well as the Idumeans, or the people of Esau, or the people of Edom. We're fighting them, trying to get them out of our land and try to reclaim back our temple, to get our temple back and to sanctify the temple again. And the Maccabee brothers were able to do that. And that's another thing that proves that these books are, I mean, you want to say divine or not, the Most High was with our forefathers during these times, because we were few in number, yet we were able to have some victories through these trying times. So the book of Maccabees record the wars we had with these heathens trying to get our temple back. So Maccabees 4 and verse 36 on down, it speaks on the time when we finally pushed the heathen, the Greeks and the Edomites out of the temple, and we started cleansing the temple, tearing down and just throwing away everything, all the swine, the altars they sacrifice swine to, all the utensils and stuff they use. We just cleaned the temple back up. And then after he got the temple cleansed, we made a new feast. So you go down to 1 Maccabees 4 and 48. And it says, I start at verse 47. Then they took whole stones according to the law and built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary and the things that were within the temple, and hollowed the courts. So we see here, like I said, they're cleaning the temple, they're getting things back in order. So you go down to verse 54, it says, look, at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it, even in that was it dedicated with songs and cithrons and harps and cymbals. So now we're worshiping. We're worshiping and we're praising, and now that the temple is cleansed. I'm sorry, I skipped the verse. So verse 50 is what I wanted. And upon the altar they burnt incense, and the lamps that were upon the candlestick they lighted, that they may give light into the temple. So they finally got the temple cleansed and they relit the candles. This started a new feast for us, and we're going to read it. This is verse 55. Then all the people fell upon their faces, worshiping and praising the Most High of heaven, who had given them good success. Verse 56. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days, and offered burnt offerings with gladness, and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold, and with the shields, and the gates and the chambers they renewed, and hanged the doors upon them. Thus was there very great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Moreover, Judas and his brothers with the whole congregation of Israel ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days, from the 25th day of the month Caslu, with mirth and gladness. And at that time also they builded up the Mount Zion with high walls and strong towers round about, lest the Gentiles should come and tread it down, as they had done before. And they set there a garrison to keep it, and fortified Bethshura to preserve it, that the people may have a defense against Idumea. So here, the brothers, our forefathers of Israel, have reclaimed our temple, they have cleansed it, and they have made it holy again. And now the leaders at the time says this is going to be a new feast, or a new holy day, or a new festival. And they kept it on the 25th day of Caslu. Now, without going into it, our Hebrew month of Caslu somehow always winds up corresponding with the pagan days they worship their gods. And that's how it crept into Christianity. But more on that later. Now we're going to go to the book of John in the current King James, and we're going to show you how Christ, the Messiah, kept this same feast day that was started in the book of Maccabees, called the Feast of Dedication. Today's word, or today, is called Hanukkah. So this is the book of John, chapter 10, and I'll start at 21. Others said, these are not the words of him that have a devil. Can a devil open the eyes of the blind? Verse 22. And it was at Jerusalem, the feast of the dedication, and it was winter. And Yahushua, or Jesus, walked in the temple in Solomon's porch. Then came the Jews round about him and said unto him, How long do you make us to doubt? If you be Christ, tell us plainly. So I read that just so you'll know that this is Christ they're talking about. And Christ himself has entered the temple through Solomon's porch. And he's there to celebrate the Feast of Dedication. The Feast of Dedication is not part of the original feast that's mentioned in Leviticus. It's only mentioned in the book of Maccabees. You will not find the Feast of Dedication mentioned anywhere else in the current King James, only in John 10 and 22. So if our Messiah is worshiping and celebrating the Feast of Dedication, where did he get this custom from? Because it's not mentioned with the other feast days in Leviticus. Leviticus 11 and I believe again in Leviticus 23 is our complete list of feast days given to us by the Most High. So if you turn to Leviticus 23, you will get the complete list of feast days. But you won't find any feast or holy day called the Feast of Dedication. Yet and still in the book of John chapter 10 verses 22 through 23, our Messiah himself celebrated the Feast of Dedication or the Feast of Lights that we call Hanukkah. I'm going to pause here till next time. I pray somebody got some understanding, some enlightenment.
Okay, the elephant is in the room. I know I don't fit in. Rejection used to scare me, but now I'm wearing thick skin. As a Christian, they won't let me infringe since I'm on the fringe, but I'm not on the fence. A life of sinning is the current, swimming with the current. A promise of punishment isn't a deterrent. So people just wild out, foul style, but it ain't what I'm about, so I gotta bow out. Cause I'm anti, I can't ride, but I can't lie. There's a tension in me. One side wants to see the sin winning in me. The other side knows there's been an intervention in me. Yeah, so I feel Paul in Romans 7. Y'all, I'm still flawed and I long for heaven. I still die daily, but no need to call the coroner. Just another day in the life of a foreigner. The world hated you, now it's hating me. It don't relate